Welcome everyone to another episode of the CX Matters podcast. My name is Justin Tippett, CEO of AXPA, and in this episode I am joined again by our gamification and employee engagement expert, Luke Jamieson. Welcome, Luke.
G'day, Justin, and g'day everyone. Thanks for listening.
Awesome to have you on again. Now, in this particular episode, we've done a number on gamification, but in this particular one, we're going to focus on, really giving people some tips for implementing gamification into a contact center specifically, because it's obviously a tool that's used by a lot of contact centers, and if they're not, they're probably considering it. So I thought, you know what, let's help ease in the pain a little bit for them and give them some tips from someone who's been there, done that several times, both as a user, but also as someone who's actually worked for some gamification software companies as well. So I think you've got a really good lens on both sides of it. So Luke, I'm going to throw it over to you for I guess some tips for people.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So I think let's just talk just quickly about the benefits and just rattle them off, which is why someone might maybe want to implement gamification. You know, there's this idea of increased sustainable employee engagement. There's sustainable employee performance, business performance, engagement with support systems, lower employee attrition, greater sense of acceptance and inclusion. All of these things creates self-driven workforce and helps create if you've got an R&R program, it helps that become more evenly distributed. So some great benefits, but I think often gamification might be seen as the panacea of the silver bullet to try and solve employee engagement or lower attrition, and people dive in really quickly.
Yep.
My tips for approaching that, first and foremost, is understand why you want to implement gamification. So really understand the key drivers. If it's purely just around business performance, think bigger. Think about how this impacts the employee. If you just turn around and put points or badges or leaderboards on an existing KPI, or even a KPI that maybe isn't all that meaningful, like hey, just show up to work, it might be seen as pretty condescending. So you need to really think about what's the impact that you want those gamification elements applied to. Like, why are you doing it? Understand your workforce, I think, is also really important. Understanding the landscape that you have. And we talked a little bit about this, about what is gamification. Really understanding who your workforce is going to help you understand the best ways to implement that. I would also say, think about your users and what they're motivated by. Just throwing more extrinsic motivational things to them, so tangible items like money, vouchers, all those sort of things, that doesn't motivate everybody. And if you need to really think about what are some of the intrinsic ways you can also motivate someone through gamification. Really set the time up front to get really good design. Gamification is very much about behavioral psychology, and I would recommend, if you have the opportunity to get a behavioral psychologist to help you in that journey, there's plenty out there that really specialize in this space. Do it. It makes a big difference. Just throwing, and I talk about points, badges, leaderboards a lot, only because they're the ones that everyone kind of thinks of. There's so many more mechanics around gamification, that are much more advanced. The last tip I would say is also think about change, like what the change that's happening. Right? So people are motivated by two things, and what they want to be and what they don't want to be. So you need to think about that when you're designing it. And lastly, I would just say that change in itself requires is not easy. It requires motivation and ability. So if you're going to try and motivate people with gamification, make sure you equally pair that with the ability. So with learning, etc. Maybe if you can combine those two in the one, great. If not, just make sure that there's an equal portion. You can't just have constant motivation all the time, expecting that to be sustainable if someone's not growing, learning, progressing, and achieving.
Yep, yeah, some great tips, Luke. I want to ask a couple of other questions, I guess, that might be on the tips of our listeners' tongue, so to speak. One is, budget. Now, you've obviously worked for some vendors that supply this, so I'm not asking to put you on the spot in terms of pricing, so don't worry. But in terms of a range, most of the models, as I understand it, are sort of per head sort of models, and I might be wrong, but typically there's an implementation sort of setup cost, and then maybe a per head per month kind of model. What is a typical range from bottom end, no bells and whistles, to this is the best of breed? Like, is it a big gap, and what's rough numbers?
It is a big gap, and I think it also comes down to functionality. So
Yep.
at the real bottom end of from just a budget perspective, you can have that for just a couple of dollars across the. You can buy it at a leaderboard level, so you're only buying essentially leaderboards that can be displayed around your contact center.
Yep.
And that's pretty cost effective, but leaderboards are also very dangerous if just set up on their own and they don't have some smarts around it. If you're at the bottom of a leaderboard, the likelihood of you being motivated to actually try and get to the top is probably pretty low, because it's just such a stretch.
Yep.
So you've got to be careful when you think, I'm just going to implement this one gamification element. So they can be quite cost effective. You could get away with that for a contact center of, let's say, 100 people. You could get away with that for maybe about $1,000 a month or less.
Okay. Yep.
On the top end of things, where you get like really rich functionality, and companies include like your implementation. It is a cost per head per license. They can range anywhere from $25 to $50 per agent per month. So that can add to the overall cost per agent pretty quickly. So it's worth really making sure you're investing in really rich analytics that you get out of the back end. Other things I think I've mentioned before, just around does it also provide things like learning? What other feature function does it provide? And if it does, then you may also get the return on investment by being able to offload something else. You could, maybe some tips for how you could budget for those. Most companies have an R&R budget. See if you can use that R&R budget to help fund that.
Yep.
Reporting analytics, help with the reporting and analytics. You could use that budget, things like that.
Yep, we're talking to Luke Jamieson, gamification expert. Luke, another question I guess I want to put to you on budget again is, you mentioned R&R budget, right? And a lot of contact centres, are probably scrapping for money all the time to find ways to reward, incentivise their staff. Now, obviously, that links into a gamification platform. I'm guessing that without an R&R budget, is it pointless having a gamification platform?
No. Not at all, because I think most R&R programs within organizations tend to lean towards the extrinsic as far as the actual reward. I think the other challenge with many of them is that they are not evenly distributed. It usually goes to just your top tier sort of people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not necessarily saying that everyone is putting in the same effort. It may be just not. It's just different outputs and different ways of benefit of adding value to an organization. Within gamification, by doing, if done properly, you can really focus on the intrinsic things. And the intrinsic stuff, the way I kind of compare extrinsic versus intrinsic, extrinsic is really loud and doesn't last long.
Right. So what would be an example of an extrinsic reward that typically that you would see?
Vouchers at the end of the month. Pizza days, anything where there's a tangible reward.
Yep.
You can put some sort of monetary value around.
Okay.
Intrinsic, on the other hand, is quiet, but it lasts a lot longer. And an example of that would be being able to clearly define the meaning within your role and purpose of your role. Being able to have that sense of achievement and sense of purpose, that sense of progress. A sense of progress is a really big one. If you're feeling like you're stagnating in your role, it's one of the really quick ways to get someone demotivated. Gamification is a great way to see progress. You've got progress bar, you've got points, you've got ladders, all these things that help you see the progress that you're achieving, different levels that you may be at. And so that in itself can be really motivating.
Fantastic. Another question I'd like to put to you is around timelines, Luke, and I know from experience this is almost how long is a piece of string, because people say how long does it take to implement a contact center platform as well, right? And well, it depends, right? How many channels you want to do, how many users you've got, do you want it cloud, on premise, blah blah blah. There's a million things, and I'm sensing the same applies to gamification. But having someone who's been there, done that, working in it, is there a rule of thumb that you would sort of say allow this period of time if you're going for a reasonably good platform?
Yeah, look, I think if you have the basic structures in place, so you know what your KPIs are, you've got some R&R programs and all those sort of things in place, you have a general sense of what you're trying to achieve, I'd say 4 to 6 weeks is pretty fair.
Okay, all right, there you go. It's a bit quicker than I thought, so that's a good positive for people that are listening. And although I guess the real proviso is on those magic bits you said. If you know your KPIs already, and there's a lot of contact centers that probably struggle with what are the right KPIs to measure, and I guess that's also something that you've got to be really careful with gamification as you do with KPIs, right? Because if we're rewarding people, as an example, for average handle time, there's a consequence for that. They're going to rush customers off the phone. It's going to impact your quality, etc. So that's a really important part, isn't it, of knowing the right KPIs?
You make a great point, and I can't believe I haven't raised this already, that gamification is about driving behaviors, and it's the behaviors you want to see that should be your focus, and the KPI and the output just should be a byproduct of good behaviors.
Yep. Okay.
That's what I actually like about gamification, is that you can actually target behaviors, which is not often what a KPI does. It targets the outcome, whereas gamification can really focus down on those behaviors that we want to see.
Yeah, fantastic. Just a bit of fun stuff, I guess. What are some of the good prizes that you've seen out there? I've literally seen contact centers for Agent of the Year, and to be fair, I'm not sure how exactly they were working that out, but literally we're talking like a brand new car, overseas trips, etc. Right? So what have you seen in your travels?
I'm the same. I've seen overseas trips, to places like Fiji. I've seen cars. PlayStation, some really big stuff.
Yeah.
I've seen it go wrong too. I've seen some of those things go wrong, like coffees.
How does coffee go wrong? What, or is it?
There was an example where if you could challenge one of your peers, and if you lost, then you had to buy the other person a coffee, and lo and behold, all the gentlemen in the contact center suddenly started losing, so that they could take out coffee. So
there you go. Yes.
Behavior they wanted to actually get. So
yeah, beware of unintended consequences, right? When setting KPIs and challenges. Fantastic. Luke, thank you so much again for your time. There are a number of other podcasts that we've recorded and articles on the AXPA website. So if you're looking for more information, make sure you have a look on the site. And if you're looking for gamification suppliers, have a look in the AXPA supplier directory. You'll find them in the contact center technology category, and there is actually a tag there for gamification. So, Luke, thank you very much. We have done some wonderful podcasts, so I really appreciate you giving up your expertise and knowledge in helping all our listeners learn a little bit more about all things gamification.
You're welcome, Justin. Thanks again for having me, and until next time, hooroo.
Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.